Hey everybody, today we are doing our lecture on chapter 13. Get excited for this lecture. We'll probably do it in two or three parts, and let's get right into it. If we're going to do two parts, we gotta go. Sweet. Overview of this lecture is after reading, we will be able to describe the fundamental techniques for performing and instructing resistance training exercises with the proper form. We'll be able to describe proper spotting techniques and the situations in which they are needed, define appropriate training equipment and apparel, and identify common resistance exercise technique errors. This is a snippet from a book that I have. It's like a training book. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I think this is in Rebuilding Milo, but I really like this quote in general because it's a good reminder that there are a lot of different exercises, there's a lot of different modalities, there's a lot of different training programs, and stick to the basics, especially as you're studying for that cert, and then we could add all the other stuff later. So this quote is, "We are drowning in information while starving for wisdom. The world henceforth will be run by synthesizers. People able to put together the right information at the right time, think critically about it, and make important choices wisely." So we are going to get a baseline of information. And as you move on throughout your trainer journey, make sure that you're intaking, you have an open mind, and you make sure that you remember your programming principles, keep it simple, stay with the fundamentals, but also be creative. So let's get into common types of resistance training equipment. Proper equipment or machine selection is essential for our programming. We want to get our clients to our goals, so we want to consider training status, proficiency of movement, anthropometry, how our client, like how tall are they, how wide are they, what's their measurements, and then personal preference of the client too. Just because a machine is really big, it can intimidate a client too. So sometimes there's an intimidation factor. Also, there's starting weight with machines. So we want to make sure that we are getting on these machines before we give our clients them as a programming tool. All right, moving on. The three main categories of resistance training equipment are constant resistance throughout a range of motion. So a bicep curl with a dumbbell is a great example of this. If I'm curling a 25 dumbbell, the weight's not going to change on the way up or the way down. The second type of category of resistance training is variable resistance through range of motion. So squatting with resistance bands as I'm coming into the eccentric portion of the squat, then my weight is increasing, and then I'm coming down to the concentric portion of the squat. My weight will be decreasing depending on where the bands are. If the bands are attached to the floor, that's how it would be. And then constant speed of contraction during a given range of motion is an isokinetic motion. So that's the second picture here. There is a fitness assessment machine that tests for maximum strength. And in this machine, you are strapped in, your joints are aligned correctly, then you're strapped in, and you're instructed to produce the most muscle force that you can, but you're not moving your joint is not moving at all, but you're pushing that resistance. So that's the third category of resistance training. Constant resistance, variable resistance, and then constant speed of contraction. All right, moving on. I will let you know when there's exam specific things. Right now, our main goal is thorough understanding. Weight machines. These weight machines allow individuals to perform single or multi-joint movements in restricted planes of motions and controlled planes of motions. So a lot of times for beginners or for bodybuilders or for anyone in general who would like an extra stabilizing factor, machines are wonderful. Also, we can push a little harder on certain parts of our body if other parts are stabilized. Common types of weight machines are selectorized, plate-loaded, cam-based, rod or linear guided, hydraulic, air or pneumatic, or isokinetic. Selectorized machines provide constant resistance through use of series of cables and pulleys to lift a weight stack. So you can also call those pin-loaded machines. Plate-loaded machines, we manually load weight plates on them. So provide constant resistance and require manually loading the weight plates. Cam-based, those are machines that provide variable resistance throughout a joint's range of motion. Absolute load does not change. Rod or linear guided provide constant resistance. The movement of the weights is limited to a straight path. So a good example of that would be a Smith machine or a leg press. For hydraulic's going to use fluid-filled pistons, cylinders to achieve resistance through a given range of motion. Only concentric actions can be performed at these machines. For air or pneumatic machines, they use compressed air cylinders to achieve resistance through a given range of motion. It allows for high velocity movements with less risk. And then isokinetic, kind of like we saw in that last photo, is computer controlled equipment that provides accommodating variable resistance throughout the movement. Contraction, not throughout the movement. Contraction speed is held constant through a given range of motion. These machines are pretty expensive and can be found in clinical settings. As we mentioned earlier, there are some centers that have testing based equipment that an individual pays maybe upward to like around $50 for each testing piece of equipment. Sweet. Let's move on. There are, when it talks about cam-based machines, one thing I did want to mention is sometimes there's these preacher curls. So they'll be, or like a lower back extension, could be, depending on the brand, could be a good example of cam-based machines. Sometimes there's preacher curls that have a plate loaded, um, option. So you could plate load your weight that you're bicep curling. That's another good example. And we'll see if we can come up with more examples in the future. All right, free weights. Free weights allow unrestricted movement in all planes of motion rather than a largely fixed movement path. So we can go everywhere. Common types of free weights are barbells, dumbbells, and kettlebells. What you see on the right is just another piece of equipment called a Y-bell. They came out with these a couple years ago. It's been a while. And there's group X classes with them, but there's, as you see, a couple different types of free weights. There's also clubs and other modalities. Barbells allow performance of multi and single joint movements in all planes of motion, and there's tons of different shapes. There's even hex bars, there's different weights, there's different lengths, there's different barbells for different types of sports, which we'll get into. Dumbbells allow for multi and single joint movements in all planes of motion, and they vary in size and shape and even color. Kettlebells allow for a variety of exercises. They have an offset center of mass. So it does take a little bit getting used to when pressing because that center of mass is usually going to be on one side of the forearm and just takes a little bit of practice. And going back, and going forward, and going back. I think I'm pushing it too fast, but I wanted to mention allowing for kettlebells allow for more momentum-based movements. Let's look at the barbell. So this is something we've added just so that you're more familiar with the equipment that you're working with. The center, let's start in the center. There's knurling. So when you see this crosshatch or the X pattern, that is for our grip. It also helps keep the bar in place on our back or even the chest or in a front squat. The knurling stops in the middle after this center knurl, stops until we get to where we place our hands. and you'll see this crosshatch pattern of grooves providing you with grip. If the barbells are cleaned frequently and often, it's a really good grip. And if not, they kind of get caked with dead skin and dirt and it gets a little gross. All right, there's two knurl marks. So because it's the knurling, right? There's two marks in the knurling. This is IPF neural mark. So this is the widest grip allowed for IPF. It's a international committee for powerlifting. That's the widest grip allowed while bench pressing. Not every barbell you see will have these knurls, but some of them do. And then this second one is the widest grip allowed while snatching for IWF. The collars are sometimes we also talk call clips, the how you clip your weight a collar, but this is actually the collar. This ensures the plates don't slide onto the main shaft of the bar. So this is the main part of the bar in the center. The shaft end is the sleeve. The sleeve is loadable, so you can put plates onto that sleeve and go crazy. All right, we're going to see a couple other barbells, but biggest takeaway is just be familiar. Please always clip your weights. If you're adding weights to a barbell, that's our scope of practice. That's what's expected out of us. Some other things about the barbell is bar diameters. Actually, let's go back here really quick. The IWF is International Weightlifting Federation, and IPF is, I believe, International Powerlifting Federation. So just double check on that. All right, barbells. Bar diameters, usually 28 to 29 millimeters. The biggest takeaway is that there's different bar sizes and people have preference for different lifts. So thinner bars are often used for deadlifts, while thicker ones are used for heavier squats. Whip. So these are some terminology terms that we want you to know. Whip is how the bar flexes under load. Olympic lifters prefer more for explosive lifts, while power lifters want stiffness for heavy squats, bench, and deadlifts. On the weekend, Chris talked about pulling out the slack of a deadlift. So when we're lifting something heavy, we don't want there to be too much give, right? But when we're powerlifting something fast, that's when it can be more, a little more flexible. PSI is a tensile strength. So PSI is saying how much stress the bar can take. 150K PSI suits most lifters, and then 190,000 is best for most competitors. Higher ratings mean more durability. There's also the spin of the bar, the sleeves. Remember from the bar over here? The collar, the sleeves are the end after the collar. The sleeve rotation, sometimes the sleeves spin and sometimes the sleeves are not supposed to spin. In Olympic weightlifting, we want the sleeves to spin and we want them to spin smoothly. That's because the weights have to move with us as we're lifting them. When we're powerlifting, our sleeves should not be spinning. So it's just a good if you're in a gym, such as the rec, where we have multiple different types of bar, make sure you're using the right bar for you. And then coating, there's a lot of different types of coating. There's weather coating, but bar coating protects against rust and wear. Common options and good options for bar coating are zinc, chrome, ceramic, bare steel. Each of them have a different grip, durability, and upkeep. Some of them require a lot of upkeep, so just make sure you do your research. We have the Easy Bar here. These are different types of specialty barbells. Easy Bar has a little curve. You'll see these a lot at preacher curl stations. Technique Bar, sometimes these weigh 15 pounds, and it's to practice Olympic lifting technique without the weight of the 45-pound bar. Sometimes there's also 35-pound bars as well. We have a hex or trap bar. We talked on the weekend about these lifted handles. You see how the handle comes up towards you? Well, if you're taller and you that's an uncomfortable reach, you simply flip the bar around and then this bottom handle is your handle. This is a Swiss bar, so it offers different grips for bench pressing, for shoulder injury. Also, you could do some back rows with it. Swiss bars and specialty barbells are often weighing different than a normal barbell. Sometimes the technique bars, easy bars are going to be lighter than 45, and then usually hex bars, Swiss bars, safety squat bars are going to be about 20 pounds heavier than a normal barbell. There's also fixed barbells. You see these a lot in gyms, and they're anywhere from like 5 pounds up to like 150. It just makes it easy to grab and go. Safety squat bar is a bar that provides neutral grip instead of the individual having to grip at this back bar right here. Can you think of any other bars that are special that you've seen? All right, let's move on. Olympic barbells. Olympic barbells, like I said, the sleeves need to spin. It should have good whip. It's designed for general strength training and should have solid knurling. Powerlifting barbells, we don't really want them to spin. If they do spin, less spin. Maximum stability, so high PSI, maximum load training, and center knurling. As you see, um, actually, let's keep moving on. Deadlift bar, thinner diameter, designed for heavy lifts, high whip. Of course, we can use a standard barbell, but be aware there are specialty barbells, and your gym might have them. Go around the gym and look at the end caps of the barbell, see what brand it is, and look into the specs of that barbell online. All right, let's continue talking about alternative equipment. All types that are not machines or free weights yet allow for motion in any movement plane is alternate equipment. What are some that you can think of? There's some ropes, right? There are some also there's clubs, like I mentioned earlier, but alternative equipment, let's keep going, often requires higher skills. So we want to introduce this to our client after we've been working with them for a little while. We've challenged their balance, we've seen their movement patterns, and let's add some alternative equipment. So there's tires, there's weighted bags. Tires, the ones seen here can actually, someone can stand in the center and pick the handles up and do a farmer's carry. So it's pretty cool. Depending on the brand of equipment, there's a bunch of functionality. Even with these tires could be used for circuit training, step ups, box jumps, like someone could jump onto the tire. There's tons of things you could do with it. Some tires are just tires, like tractor tires, right? And that would be tire flipping is the main thing you could do with it, or hitting with a sledgehammer. And then we have weighted bags, commonly filled with sand. They provide constant and equal distribution of weight, which may transfer to activities of daily living or sport. Now, I did mention sledgehammer, right? I want to remind us all that we want to make sure that we're teaching the equipment, the exercises that are in our book. There is another book they suggest you to buy with this NSCA third edition, like Essentials of Personal Training, and that's the exercise technique manual. All those exercises, fair game. Anything in addition, make sure you're using your professional prudence, you have good programming, and you have the right certs. There are other certs that give you new exercises, like there's a tactical cert that has different type of workouts. There's things like the Pilates cert, right? So different types of certs will give us access to alternative equipment such as TRX and stuff like that. But in general, if it's in your book or it's in the exercise technique manual, then you're completely safe to teach it. Just make sure you do it yourself first. Alternative equipment continuing, we have ropes. Lengths of ropes varying in thickness, used to improve upper body strength, mostly cardio. It could also improve some power, mainly muscular endurance and general conditioning. Instability devices, so there's stability balls, foam pads. You see some of those in the rec under the staircase. There's Bosu balls, suspension devices such as a TRX. It's like total body resistance, something. Bosu stands for both sides up. Those are those balls, if you're in the rec in room 205, that are always accessible, or there's a big blue round hump on one side and there's a flat black side on one side. Then there's medicine balls and slam balls. They're used to perform traditional and power movements, seated, standing, kneeling lunge, kneeling position, supine position, and these balls get thrown at high speeds. And then there's chains. So it's a form of variable resistance. Remember, we talked about the three types of resistance, and the resistance is affected by the chain thickness. So the thicker the chains are, the more heavy they're going to be. Moving on, we do have the clubs here. We have resistance bands, so that's also another type of alternative equipment. Tension is provided by several factors, usually band thickness. Then wooden clubs, also plastic clubs, metal clubs. They resemble the shape of a baseball bat or bowling pin, and it's traditional. They come from traditional exercises. There's very there's various striking, swinging movements to do. There's also rope. There's like rope flow. People very similar, not so much striking, but swinging movements with the rope flow. And there's also sleds for pulling, pushing, dragging. And can you think of any other alternative equipment in your gym? Has there always been something on the floor that you're like, what the heck is that? There's parallel bars. There are sometimes ab mats and things like that. So let's continue out of alternative equipment to fundamental technique. We're going to talk about hand grip types. So there are a lot. What is A? A is going to be our close grip. Isn't that nice? Um, B is our hook grip. Yeah. Oh, sorry. A is our alternating grip. That was a silly moment for me. Okay. But A is alternating grip. The R on that left hand is saying that that's the right hand. And so it's trying to show that it is alternating grip. Alternating grip is great. One hand is pronated, one hand is supinated. So one hand's out, one hand's facing you. And this is great when we're doing heavy deadlifts and pulling something heavy from the ground is when alternated grip is the most appropriate. Sumo's wonderful. Hook grip is the picture B, and you see how the thumb is hidden, the tip of the thumb is hidden with that forefinger. That's hooking the thumb under, typically used for Olympic weightlifting. Closed grip is what we want our clients to do. So, yes, the thumb will be touching the index finger, but there's no hooking going on. And this is where we always want to coach with. We do not want to coach without the thumb because there's a risk of potential injury or forward slippage of the bar. And it's our scope of practice to get that thumb around the bar. Okay. What we do not want to coach is that last bullet point, open or false grip. And as we've seen over the weekend, when we were doing a lat pull and our thumb was not under the bar, it's a lot easier for the bar to be let go of, especially if one gets a little sweaty or tired. And that thumb just provides that extra protection. And yes, it wouldn't be the worst thing if we just let the bar slap back, right? So say we get tired and we're doing a lat pull down and we pull it down to our chest, we touch the chest lightly, and then it's coming back up and it gets past my chin, past my nose, it's going up towards the top, back up, and then I just let it slam, right? Well, the only thing that's going to be hurting is the machine, right? But what if I had a open grip and I let the bar go when it didn't even come up past my face yet? I could potentially hit myself in the face, right? So it's just an extra precaution. And then the grips that we skipped is pronated grip, overhand grip. That's how sometimes we typically will row or do a bench press. Supinated grip, sometimes we underhand grip to get some of the back muscles or just to variate our grip. And then neutral grip is palms facing in, and that's like the safety squat bar or the Swiss bar that we saw in the past for bench pressing. We're going to do this like this slide and another slide, and then we're going to end it for this portion, and we'll go on to part two. So hand grip widths, these are the distance that hands are placed apart for different lifts. So the standard widths overall are close. So that's this narrow one. Hip width That means the hands are gripping outside of the hip. Common is showing like the shoulder width where you'd grip right under your shoulders if you're standing by the bar. Hey, get back here. And then wide is where you're gripping for like if you're snatching. So we are going to end right here actually, and you'll see part two coming pretty soon. Let's see if there's a part three. Yes, we'll probably have part two and part three. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, just let us know.